Our gospel reading for tonight comes from John, the 14th chapter. Jesus answered him, "Those who love me will keep my command, and my Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them. Whoever does not love me does not keep my words, and the word that you hear is not mine, but is from the Father who sent me. I have said these things to you while I am still with you, but the Advocate, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you everything and remind you of all that I have said to you. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not let them be afraid. You heard me say to you, I am going away and I am coming to you. If you loved me, you would rejoice that I am going to the Father, because the Father is greater than I. And now I have told you this before it occurs, so that when it does occur, you may believe." This is the gospel of our Lord. Please be seated. I know it's a little early in the season to be asking this, but are there any water skiers out there? Raise your hand. Any water skiers? Anyone that's ever water skied? There you go. That's better. That's better. Wow, I was worried there for a second. I should ask, how many of you have attempted to water ski? Attempted to water ski. Well, I remember way back when all those many attempts I made at getting up on those skis. Does anyone remember those days? Huh? There you were floating in the water, trying with all your might to get those skis perpendicular to the water and hopefully parallel to one another, right? You had to make sure that rope was in the middle between those skis, and then you had to wait because some bozo drove by in their boat and created too many waves, right? And there you sit nervous. "Tighten the rope," I learned to yell. And when everything seemed just right, at least around our family, we'd yell those two words, "Hit it." Right? Anybody else yell those two words? Hit it. And inevitably, in a couple of short minutes, what was hidden was my face on the water. Again and again and again. I don't know about you, maybe I'm just a little uncoordinated, but I never thought I would ever get up. Yet we yell, "Hit it." And then one of our dads, it seemed like he slammed that throttle down, and I remember holding on for dear life, thinking for certain I was going to drown, sucking in half the water in the lake. But then, do you remember the first time? The first time when you held on, your skis stayed pointed forward, you opened your eyes to realize you did it. Huh? You did it. You actually got up. No offense to those of you that didn't get up. But just take my word for it. It's amazing. You're gliding across the top of the water there for the first time. You experience that feeling of something totally new. Something totally new. They're skimming across the top of the water. Okay, so maybe a little wishful thinking is going because this winter seems to never end. But thinking about that first time, the first time I conquered that new skill, the first time I experienced that new feeling, that new experience of being up on those water skis, that feeling reminds me a bit, maybe just a little bit, of what the author of the book of Revelation was getting at way back when he wrote these words that Mike read for today, words that promised that God was up to something new. God promised something new and something that was so good. A promise that the people would experience something new unlike anything at all that they could fathom. You see, that reading from the book of Revelation was written in a time when things were anything but nice and neat and calm. See, the folks of that day, they lived in a time when they were afraid. They lived under persecution. It was a time when it was easier just to do what you were told rather than to stand up for what you believed. It was a time where day after day, it was the same old powers of injustice that seemed to control everything. And it was day after day that it felt like, well, it sort of felt like trying to get up on those water skis again and again, only to be slapped in the face by that water again. I imagine the people had gotten so callous to all that was going on, they thought there's nothing new that could possibly happen. And it's there amidst all that the author of Revelation gives people a vision. He paints a picture, you could say, of what God could do and what God would do. It was something totally unbelievable and all new. The author of Revelation paints a picture of how God would take their community and make something holy, something beautiful, and something wonderful. There would be healing, and there would be wholeness. All they knew would be transformed. And they would know peace and joy and love. The author of this book wanted them to remember that God promised to do something new. A new thing, and it would be so good. But I imagine, on the one hand, this came as exciting news to the folks of that day. This is what they'd hoped for, that God hadn't abandoned them. And yet I guess that those ancient people way back when, I guess many of them responded to this prospect of something new, this prospect of change, you could say, kind of like we do now. Okay, if someone offers a vision of change, of something new, how do we usually respond, people? Well, if we're honest, don't we usually respond with a whole lot of skepticism? If I had $1 for every time someone said to me, Pastor, that's not how we've always done it, I'd be a pretty wealthy man. Don't we respond to change, to something new, often with cynicism and uneasiness? But we know in our real lives, folks, we know that new things happen. Change is happening all the time, right? Things are changing. Our kids grow up and they become more and more independent, we hope. New health concerns means change. New challenges at work means change. Family finances change. There are new beginnings that mean empty seats at our dinner table, and then there are other changes that mean additional seats at our dinner table. Something new is always happening. It's always happening. Folks, it's always happened, and it always will. And it seems to me, as I talk with folks, regardless of your age or life experience, when we get confronted with something new, some sort of change, our response is generally fear. We get afraid. Right? It's going to be different. This isn't always what we've always done. When faced with change, we know things they're not going to be the same. A while back, I was with a friend who was getting a new car. And it was a beautiful, beautiful brand new car. It had all the bells and whistles, and as she was about to get into this brand new car and drive it away from the dealer's lot, I asked, so what do you think of your new car? And this friend responded, get this, it's a brand new car, beautiful car. Her response to my question was this: well, it's different. This isn't how it's been. A lot of bells and whistles here. Folks, we know the fear of change, right? I suppose it's fear of change that leads to all this crazy gridlock politics that seems to be so pervasive in society today. We fear change. And I think it's natural. We like our routines. We find comfort in it. We don't want to rock. We don't want our boats rocked too much. And to those of us, all of us sitting here today, all of us change fearers, we read some more words today. In our reading from the Gospel of John, we hear these words: peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not let them be afraid. Do not be afraid. Jesus says to those disciples, when he is about to leave, he says, do not be afraid. And in fact, if you were to look through the whole Bible, more than anything else, we hear this phrase, do not be afraid. Fear not. When faced with changes in life, the prospect of new beginnings, Jesus says, fear not. You need not fear, for I am with you. And yes, it sounds too simplistic. Yes, of course, life will be hard and painful. We all know this. But ultimately, the promises of our faith is that we need not fear. Because in the end, God promises to do a new thing. And so, folks, this weekend, as I shared at the beginning of the service, we especially cling to this promise of God here at Calvary. Because I think we can see signs of God's promise right here. As we talked about, there are specific people we care a whole lot about here at Calvary who need God's promise. Tomorrow, we're going to hold that benefit for little Brady Lynn. Brady has leukemia, and that stinks. The Lynn family's walking a tough journey. And as we talked about, as Mike shared, Mike's going through a tough time. And it stinks. It stinks. And I'm going to guess that each one of us has our own fears in life. We've all walked scary journeys, and somewhere along the way, we've been filled with that fear. But folks, God promises. God promised those biblical characters living way back when that God was about to do something new. We know a bit about what they were experiencing. We've had times when each one of us has felt as though we've reached a dead end, as though there's no way out, as though there's no beginning. But here's the deal. It was true way back then, and I believe it's true today. When we face our most difficult days, it's right there in there that God promises something new. God promises to walk with us and surround us and show us a new future, a future filled with joy and hope. And I think, I believe with all my heart, we see a little of this here at Calvary this weekend. Folks, since that Lynn family discovered Brady's leukemia, I think God's been using us here, to do something new in the life of that Lynn family. To support them and love them and care for them, help them in any way we can. I think God's up to something new through you and me, this family we share here. And knowing what Pastor Mike is going through, you're going to do the same for him. And folks, God's promise is true for you and me too. We need not fear. We need not be afraid, because I think when we're fearful, we're paralyzed and it leaves us alone. But when we don't fear, when we hear God's promise that God will do a new thing, we tell our stories. We share our rough roads with others. We let them inside our lives so that they can care for us and support us with the love of Christ, so they can be the hands and feet of Jesus in our lives, giving us peace. Folks, you've heard it now. Jesus says, do not be afraid, fear not, because God promises that God will do something in your life. Thanks.